Before we begin, I'm going to be entirely honest, I don't actually know what this is called. Don't have a clue. It probably had a name in the 1970s, but like most pieces of footwork, people don't really pay attention to the names of them. You know, it just gets lost to the sands of time, if they even get named at all. So as much as I hate contributing to the internet's constant obsession with giving tricks ridiculous names that have no bearing in history or fact, I call this the turn-in. You might call it something else, and if you do, that's fine. However, if someone who was skating in the 1970s knows the original name for it, please send me a message or an email, because I would love to know what it's actually called. Anyway, it's a fun thing, so let's get on with it. Because of the fact your feet are going to be moving around quite a lot during this trick, it's kind of silly me showing you a starting position. However, I realised that a lot of people who've done a lot of ollies, they'll be skating like this. If your heel is hanging over to the side, you're not going to be able to do this sequence. You want your front foot at the very least at a diagonal like this, so that your heel is on top of the grip tape, ready for the first part of the move. To a certain degree, you can think of this as an alternative to a walk the dog, in that it's a sequence of small moves that can repeat pretty much as long as you want to. The core element of it is turning this foot in first, hence why I call it the turn-in. And it's also why we start in this foot position. I'm going to spin at the heel, and I'm going to point that foot straight at the other one. Now, this is going to feel really uncomfortable, but that's a good thing, because your body naturally wants to get out of this position. So by turning that in and pointing it straight down the board, I can start to unwind, relieve this tension, and take this foot off, and step round to the tail. This is the first part of the move. It's very important that as you do that, this front foot comes as far back as possible, because if you're up here, you're not going to have the space to get onto the other end of the board. So if I repeat, you'll see that's why I'm spinning around the heel. If I spin around the toes, I end up down at this end. It's good for a jaywalk, but it's not going to work for this sequence. Spinning at the heel instead, I naturally close my stance and come to this slightly awkward T-shaped position, ready to step round to there. Once I've done this, I can finish the movement by letting that momentum carry me through an end over on this back leg. And then I can repeat. It really is that simple, but there's a couple of keys to making it look good and flow. So this is where things get a little weird, and this is why I haven't covered this footwork up until this point. Unlike the walk the dog or end overs, where your feet stay in roughly the same place throughout, this one requires a little adjustment, a little shuffle, in order to be able to loop it. The first time you do the sequence is quite easy. You just turn to there, step, and turn. But most of the time when you do that end over, you'll find you're not quite in the right position to have the space to turn back in. So what you've got to do is you've got to shuffle that foot just slightly, repositioning it during the end over. So what I actually do is, as I'm doing the end over, I lift up on my toes just slightly. So instead of being in this position, I can spin, get to about here, and then I can twist on my heel again. It's very, very slight, and most of the time I don't even realize I was doing it. It's only when I was trying to think about how to film this and how to teach someone this that I realized that tiny little shuffle, that transfer from heel to toe, is what makes this whole thing work. So like a lot of footwork, this is really difficult to explain, it's difficult to show. It's something you have to feel and you have to experience yourself to really get. But like I said, if I'm here and then I do an end over, my foot is not in the right position to spin back round. If I spin at the heel now, I'm right down at one end of the board and it's all going to go horribly wrong. So as I do that end over, I've got to slide that foot up to here. I've got to go from this position and slide up to there. That means I've got to both shimmy that forward and spin on the toes, freeing up the heel, getting the heel into the right position to transfer for the next part of the move. The key to making this smooth and making it comfortable is actually adding a little tic-tac in there, just a little one. And that kind of smooths everything out. I'm not sure why I started to do it or when I started to do it, but it certainly made it feel much more comfortable. It's kind of like with cross-stepping on a longboard, you know, when they walk up and down it. You can theoretically do it like this, just straight line. It's the right steps and it's the right move, but it has no flow, it has no style. As soon as you start swapping your weight, so heels, toes, heels, toes, so you're carving on each part of that, it ties it all together and gives it much more flow. So that's what we're going to do here. What I tend to do when I'm repeating these is I'll do a little backside kick turn, and then I'll do that, just a little frontside swing as I step in. That little push off not only helps me get that foot into the right position, because it reduces the amount I actually have to turn, but it pushes me away and it propels me in that direction. That small little change will take this from being robotic and stagnant into something that's fun and fluid. Hopefully it should go without saying that you should not lean forward at all throughout this move. You're going to be spinning around a lot in the center of the board. If you lean in either direction, all that's going to happen is you're going to get past the wheelbase, you're going to get past the truck, and you're going to kick the board out in one direction or the other. Try and keep yourself central and upright throughout, and you shouldn't have a problem. But if I repeat that and lean forward, I very quickly lose the board and risk falling on my face. As with most footwork, how comfortable this move is and how good it looks is going to depend a lot on your setup. Now, up until this point, I've been using my Pro model, obviously, which is very, very mellow, very flat kicktails, no concave in the middle, which is something I'll get back to in a bit, but both ends are exactly the same, which is nice for things like this because it means that after I do the sequence once, it's going to feel exactly the same the next time I do it. But there's no reason you can't do this on a directional board, which is why I've got a single kick with me. And this is basically a replica of the old Hansel Ingram boards that was made for me by a friend of mine called Brendan. And it's a lovely board, but I'm not a single kick skater. Flat noses always confuse me. I'm used to bidirectionality, but it works and I can do it just fine. Takes some adjustment, but it's okay. And the reason for that? No concave. Because of how much your foot is going to be moving around across this board, if you have any concave, this is going to feel very, very strange. And if you've got big street style concave, it's going to be an utter nightmare. The flatter your board is in the middle, the smoother you can move across it. I'm a big advocate for flat boards. And if you want to get into footwork like this, I highly recommend you give them a go as well. One last thing. No matter how tempting it is, do not rush this movement. You want to do it as slow and as smooth as possible to begin with. Focus on being fluid, being gentle, and doing full, complete motions. This isn't like an ollie trick. You don't want to stomp it, you don't want to be heavy-footed. It should be slow and graceful. There is nothing worse than seeing choppy footwork. People think that speed makes it look impressive, but it doesn't, it just makes it look messy. And also, if you learn it slow to begin with, later on, you can do it as fast as you need. I'm doing that about as slow as possible. But because of the fact that I can do it smoothly and cleanly, it looks a lot faster and better than it actually was. And because I learned to do it that cleanly, slowly, when I need to go fast, I can do it just as well.